There is something happening inside your engine right now that you cannot see, cannot feel, and will not notice for another 20,000 miles. And every time you pull into a Tesco, an Asda, a Morrison's, or a Sainsbury's to save 3p per liter because you are already there doing the shopping, you are making it slightly worse. Not dramatically worse, not immediately worse. That is the point. The damage is slow, it is invisible. And by the time it becomes a misfire, or a rough idle, or a fuel consumption figure that keeps creeping up, no matter how gently you drive, you are not looking at a warning. You are looking at a bill, one that starts at $250 and does not have a ceiling. Last year, an independent garage in Birmingham documented 47 direct injection engines in a single year, requiring intake valve cleaning, walnut blasting, where compressed media is driven through the secondary intake ports to break carbon deposits off the valve crowns. The average bill was $380. Of those 47 cars, 39 had been filled up almost exclusively at supermarket forecourts. Their engines looked like something had been burning coal in them. That is not coincidence, that is a pattern. And here is the one detail the other videos on this topic miss. One of those supermarkets, in specific locations, is actually fine, if you know exactly where to look on the pump before you fill up. I will show you that at the end. The industry knows about this. Your car manufacturer knows about this. The fuel companies know about this. The only person in that chain who has not been told is you. 3 things specifically. First, which engines are structurally vulnerable to this damage and why. If you drive a car built after 2012, there is a strong probability your engine is in this category. I will name the specific units so you know before I explain anything else. Second, why the UK legal standard for petrol was never designed to protect those engines, what the actual protection standard is, and which stations deliberately chose not to meet it. Third, the 5 stations that made the opposite decision, not the 5 most expensive. The 5 with the correct chemistry, including the one that will surprise you. Before the fuel standard, the engine, because the mechanism only lands once you know if your car is in the frame. For most of automotive history, fuel was injected into the intake manifold, upstream of the intake valves. The fuel-air mixture washed over the valve faces on every cycle. Whatever detergent was in the fuel cleaned the valves as it passed. Low additive fuel caused injector deposits, but the intake valves were self-cleaning by default because fuel touched them constantly. Direct injection changed that permanently. In a direct injection engine, GDI, TFSI, TSI, TGDI, EcoBoost, fuel bypasses the intake valves entirely and injects straight into the combustion chamber. The intake valves are never touched by fuel. They are only ever exposed to air and crankcase vapors. The partially combusted oily gases recirculated through the PCV system on every cycle. Those vapors deposit residue on the back of the intake valve crowns on every cycle. Without interruption, nothing washes it off. Over 30,000 to 80,000 miles, the deposits build thick enough to disrupt airflow through the secondary intake ports, the passages that direct the air-fuel charge into the combustion chamber. When that airflow becomes turbulent, the fuel-air mixture does not atomize correctly. Combustion degrades, the engine runs rougher, fuel consumption climbs, eventually a cylinder misfires. The specific component that fails is the secondary intake port and the valve sitting in it. The deposit on the crown of that valve is what walnut blasting removes, and it looks on a high-mileage direct injection engine that has run on low detergent fuel, like a thick black crust coating each valve face. Here is the trap that nobody tells you about at the point of sale. By the time that deposit triggers a noticeable symptom, the valve surface underneath it has often been thermally stressed. The carbon was insulating it from the cooling effect of the air charge on every intake stroke. The damage to the valve and port geometry is sometimes partially permanent. The walnut blast removes the deposit. It does not always restore the original surface condition. You cannot fix this retroactively with better fuel once it is severe. You can only slow the rate at which it gets there. The engines in this category are the ones in most UK cars sold since 2012. The BMW B38 and B48, every 1, 2, 3, and 5 series with a 3 or 4 cylinder petrol. The Volkswagen Group EA211 and EA8A8, the 1.0, 1.4, 1.5, and 2.0 TSI units in every Golf, Polo, Audi A3, Seat Leon, and Skoda Octavia sold in the last decade. The Ford 1.0 and 1.5 EcoBoost, the Hyundai and Kia TGDI and the i30, Tucson, Sportage, and Ceed, the Toyota and Lexus D4ST units. If your car was bought new after 2014, you are almost certainly running one of these engines. and you have been running it on fuel that does not have enough detergent in it to slow the process. Before I explain why, check this now. Go to your car's onboard computer and find the long-term fuel trim reading. On most cars, it is in the live data or trip computer section. Sometimes labeled LTFT, it should sit between -5 and +5%. If it is reading +8, +10, or higher, your engine is already compensating for degraded combustion efficiency. It is adding extra fuel to try to correct the air-fuel ratio that a partially blocked intake port is disrupting. That reading is your engine telling you something has already changed. On cars without accessible fuel trim data, a cold start hesitation that clears after 30 seconds of running is a reliable early symptom of intake valve deposit accumulation, not a definitive diagnosis. But if your engine stumbles briefly on cold start and then smooths out, that is worth noting. Write down what you find. It will mean more by the end of this. Every petrol station in the UK sells fuel that meets BSEN 228, the British standard for unleaded petrol. It governs octane rating, energy content, sulfur limits, benzene levels, oxidation stability. It is a serious document. It ensures the fuel combusts correctly and does not corrode your fuel system. It does not adequately govern the detergent additive package. The floor was set for the cheapest possible production of fuel, not for direct injection engines. Not for the engine in your Golf or your Focus or your 3 Series. Compliance is not protection, the floor is a trap. In the late 1990s, BMW, Toyota, Honda, and General Motors looked at the warranty claims. They were processing for fuel system deposits and collectively decided the legal minimum was insufficient. They wrote their own standard, top-tier detergent gasoline, specifying the minimum detergent concentration required to keep modern engines clean. Volkswagen, Audi, Ford, and Mercedes-Benz joined later. The specification is published, the testing is independent. Fuel suppliers apply, get tested, and either carry the top-tier certification or they do not. In the UK, 4 station brands hold it: Shell, BP, Esso, and Texaco. The supermarkets do not hold it, they meet the legal minimum. They know the difference. They made the calculation that the additive package upgrade cost cannot be justified by any commercial benefit they can measure. They are correct from their perspective. Their perspective does not include your secondary intake ports. Supermarkets do not sell petrol to make money from petrol. The margin on fuel is thin. The forecourt is a footfall mechanism. You fill up, you walk inside, you spend $60 on a shopping trip you had not planned. The fuel price is the hook. The money is in the basket. Every penny added to the additive package goes on something that has no visible benefit on the receipt, no marketing claim that resonates, and no consequence for the supermarket when your intake valve starts coking at 60,000 miles. They will tell you their fuel meets all UK and European requirements. It does. That sentence is true, and it tells you nothing useful about whether it protects your engine. They know this. They have decided it does not matter to them. This was not an oversight. It was a margin decision. One detail worth knowing before Station 3. One of those supermarkets supplies some of its forecourts from a top-tier certified source. The fuel at those specific sites is not supermarket grade. Most drivers filling up there have no idea. That detail is coming. Station 1, Shell. Shell holds top-tier certification across its standard unleaded and diesel. The additive chemistry, Shell Fuel Save for standard grades, V-Power Nitro Plus for the premium range, exceeds the top-tier threshold. On deposit control, friction modification, and corrosion inhibition, V-Power Nitro Plus uses a 5-component formulation that includes a targeted deposit dispersant for combustion chamber and secondary intake port surfaces. It does not just prevent new deposits, it actively breaks down existing ones over successive fill-ups. For most drivers, standard Shell unleaded is sufficient. V-Power is worth the premium on high-mileage direct injection engines, or vehicles where the fuel trim reading you just checked is elevated. The chemistry is real. The certification is independently verified. Station 2, BP. Top tier certified across the UK range. BP's active technology, the additive system in standard BP and BP Ultimate, has been independently validated for deposit control, friction reduction, and corrosion protection. BP Ultimate uses a higher concentration version of the same chemistry, targeted at cleaning existing deposits on injector tips and combustion surfaces. BP's network is extensive. For drivers switching from supermarket fuel, it is usually the most geographically accessible top-tier option, and typically the smallest price premium above what they are used to paying. Start here if proximity is a factor. Station 3, Esso. Top-tier certified. Esso Synergy Fuel uses a 7-component additive package, including deposit control agents, friction modifiers, corrosion inhibitors, and antioxidants. Independent deposit testing places Esso's performance broadly equivalent to Shell and BP on standard grades. Now, the Tesco detail. Tesco and Esso have a long-standing supply arrangement at a significant number of UK sites. At those locations, the fuel on the forecourt is Esso sourced and carries Esso's additive package, top-tier equivalent chemistry. Despite the Tesco signage on the building, the site looks like a Tesco. The fuel is Esso. The way to tell is the branding on the pump canopy itself, not the supermarket building. Esso-supplied sites will show the Esso branding on the pump head. Tesco-supplied sites will show Tesco branding. These are two different products at two different chemistry levels. The decision about which one you are pumping happens at the canopy, not at the car park entrance. This is the exception mentioned in the hook. It is worth knowing, and it changes the calculus for drivers who regularly pass a Tesco forecourt, because some of them are not actually Tesco fuel. Station 4. Texaco. Top-tier certified and consistently underestimated. Texaco's Havoline additive package meets the same top-tier threshold as Shell, BP, and Esso. Deposit testing results are in the same tier. The network is smaller, but the pricing is frequently the most competitive of the 4 certified options, in some areas notably below Shell and BP. If you have been paying supermarket prices and find the jump to Shell or BP jarring as a weekly cost, Texaco bridges that gap without sacrificing the certification. Same standard, less prominent brand, better price. This is the definition of value. Station 5. Jet. Jet is not top-tier certified. That needs to be stated plainly at the front because everything else follows from it. Jet uses a proprietary additive package, Jet Clean, which independent assessments place above the supermarket minimum but below the top-tier threshold. In terms of deposit control performance on injector tips and combustion surfaces, Jet sits in a middle tier between the 4 certified stations above and the supermarket forecourts below. Jet is on this list for one specific reason: geography. The UK is not uniformly served by Shell, BP, Esso, and Texaco. In rural areas of Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, on certain motorway sections, and in towns where the branded networks have limited presence, Jet is frequently the realistic alternative to a supermarket forecourt. In that situation, Jet is meaningfully better than Tesco or Asda. The chemistry is not equivalent to top tier. The protection is substantially better than the legal minimum. If you have consistent access to any of the 4 above, use one of those. If your only practical choice is Tesco or Jet, use Jet. 2 checks before you fill up. First, the top-tier logo on the pump. It is a green diamond with top-tier lettering, typically on the pump face near the grade selection. Shell, BP, Esso, and Texaco carry it. If you see it, you are in the right place. If you do not, and you have a choice within a reasonable distance, use that choice. Second, the brand on the pump canopy, not the brand on the building. This applies specifically to Tesco Esso sites, but the principle is universal. The additive package is determined by the fuel brand. The retail brand is irrelevant for drivers with significant supermarket fuel mileage. 1 tank of Shell V-Power or BP Ultimate is a reasonable transition step. The higher concentration deposit dispersants will begin working on existing injector deposits within a few hundred miles. They will not reverse severe secondary intake valve deposits. That is a mechanical job at this point if it is already significant. But as a first step, the chemistry supports it, and it costs approximately an extra $5 on a single fill. After that, standard Shell, BP, Esso, or Texaco is the ongoing bar. You do not need premium grade on every visit. Top-tier standard is what your engine was specified to run on. One more thing before the manifesto. When an independent garage books your car in for a walnut blast, there is no box on the invoice that says caused by supermarket fuel. There is no line that connects the repair to the forecourt. The garage bills you for a maintenance procedure. The supermarket never appears in the transaction. Your manufacturer's warranty almost certainly excludes it. Fuel choice is classified as a maintenance decision outside their control. There is no mechanism by which the cost lands anywhere except your account. The damage was accumulating at every fill-up. The bill arrives at a single moment. Nothing connects them officially. That is not an accident of circumstance. That is how a system looks when no party in it has any incentive to close the loop. You are the only person in that chain who did not know. Every petrol station in the UK will sell you fuel that starts your car. That is the floor. Your engine fires. The car moves. The legal minimum is met. Stop trusting the floor. Stop pulling into the forecourt on the left because it is 3p cheaper and you are already there. Stop letting a margin decision made by a supermarket's procurement team determine what happens inside your secondary intake ports over the next 5 years. Stop making the cheapest choice on the assumption that cheap and adequate are the same thing. They are not. They have never been. Start looking for the green diamond on the pump. Start filling up where the manufacturers whose engines are in your car told the fuel companies the chemistry needed to be. Start choosing it the way your engine was designed to be fueled. The price difference per fill is small. The difference inside your engine over 80,000 miles is not. Which stations have you been using? Drop your car, your engine code if you know it, and your usual forecourt in the comments. If you have had a walnut blast, a rough idle that turned out to be carbon deposits, or a fuel system repair on a car that spent its life at supermarket forecourts, that comment is worth more to the people about to make the same decision than anything in this video. If this pattern feels familiar, the legal minimum sold as adequate, the damage invisible and deferred, the bill landing somewhere the seller will never appear, subscribe. Because this gap between what the law requires and what your product actually needs exists across almost every major purchase category: fuel, laptops, appliances, audio equipment. The mechanism is the same in all of them. The seller meets the minimum. The cost lands with you, years later, without a traceable cause. The next video covers a category where the damage happens faster and the gap is even harder to see.